It was the company that opened the skies to everyone, a dirt-cheap airline that would get you to popular destinations for a fraction of the price. Spirit was flying high, but now it's crashing and burning, and it may be about to give up the ghost. What went wrong? On today's episode of the Infographics Show, we're explaining why Spirit Airlines is failing. Every vacation seems like a great idea until you look at the airline prices. When it comes to taking trips in the United States, there are drawbacks to everything. A family of 4 flying to their destination could easily wind up paying well over $1,000 before they even break out the spending money. And that's where Spirit Airlines came in. It was originally a small trucking and air charter outfit that offered cheap travel packages to popular vacation spots like Atlantic City and Las Vegas. But in 1992, the company, then known as Charter One, bought its first jet aircraft and it started offering flights to local destinations in the Northeast. A year later, it expanded to Florida, and it was soon operating around the country. And its model was simple: affordable flights accessible to the average consumer. It was always a budget airline compared to its rivals, but it only started to stand out later. And that was all due to one man. Spirit Airlines had a bumpy takeoff. In 1994, the company gave incorrect instructions to travel agents, causing large-scale overbooking. Around 1,400 passengers had their flights canceled, and the company had to pay for flights on rival airlines out of its own pocket. And then in 2000, the company was found to be violating federal regulations on its signage and was fined $67,000 by the government. Despite this, it kept on expanding, as many people who needed a more affordable flight option became fond of the brand. However, the increased competition, especially with fellow low-cost carriers Frontier and Allegiant being founded and crowding in on the space, meant it still struggled to reach profitability. And the new CEO decided that to go high, they would have to go low. Ben Baldanza was hired as the president of Spirit in 2005 and was promoted to CEO in 2006. For the next decade, Spirit would essentially be a one-man operation, and he would oversee a complete transformation of the company's business model. His proposal was to see just how low fares could go. It would transform them from a low-cost carrier into an ultra-low-cost carrier, offering flights to destinations around the country for a price more similar to a Greyhound bus. On the face of it, it sounded impossible, but Baldanza believed you just had to cut enough. Frontier and Allegiant would soon follow suit with this business model, and the truth behind it would become clear. Rock-bottom prices would come with bare-bones service, and while this wouldn't be for everyone, it was a convenient option for those who really couldn't afford any other choice. The airplane of last resort might not seem like an appealing concept, but Baldanza understood that it was a market to be tapped, and soon the business was booming. But those low prices came with a catch. Spirit Airlines might have been a popular airline, but it was not a beloved one at all. In fact, not long into Baldanza's tenure, it became one of the most despised airlines in the world, infamous for what people said was terrible service. Now, you might think that this would doom a company. After all, customer reputation was essential for a company succeeding in most cases. But that wasn't the case here. Rather, the attitude from most customers was simply, you get what you pay for, and the Spirit experience was all part of the savings. But at times, those savings weren't exactly what they were hyped up to be. Spirit Airlines was shockingly cheap at times, with flights across the country often being advertised for under $100. And when they say no frills, they mean it. Things that are considered basic on other flights are an upcharge here. Those little snacks and half cups of soda you get with your flight? On Spirit, those are only offered if you pay for the Go Comfy fare before you get on board. The same goes for checked bags, which are charged on most airplanes by now. However, Spirit also charges a fee for your carry-on bag, which its fellow ultra-low-cost carriers followed suit on. And that means that you only get one personal item like a purse or a backpack. So while someone on a quick business trip might be able to get by on this, most vacationers will be shelling out. And that is before you even sit down. One of the biggest hassles on any airplane now has been ensuring that you get to sit next to your loved one, something that's even more critical if you're flying with kids. When it comes to Spirit, the value fare just assigns your seat randomly, and there's an upcharge if you want to select a specific seat. That means that most Spirit flights will wind up being significantly more than the initial ticket price, especially if you're taking a longer flight across the country. And the sticker shock gained the company a reputation for clickbaiting. And that is assuming you get there. Another hitch in the Spirit Airlines plan is that to get the lowest price, you have to agree to your flight being non-refundable and non-changeable. That means if you oversleep, you get held up at the TSA check, or you have a family emergency before your vacation, you are just out of luck. Not only do you have to eat the cost of your initial ticket, but you have to book a completely new flight on your own dime. This inflexibility made Spirit a questionable choice for many people worried about the variables. But missing your flight is generally on you. That wasn't Spirit's biggest problem. Spirit's worst PR disaster ever came in 2012 when a Florida veteran who had purchased a ticket between his home and Atlantic City had to cancel. Spirit refused to refund his ticket, as was their policy. But this time it made national news. The man was terminally ill and had been told by his doctor that it wasn't safe for him to fly. The outrage among veterans groups spread quickly, and boycott threats followed. In the end, Spirit did refund the man's flight and issued an apology, as well as made a donation to the Wounded Warrior Project. It was an ugly look at how Spirit's inflexible policies could create a disaster. But it wasn't just the passengers who were in the line of fire. Spirit didn't just sell tickets on a budget, it ran on a shoestring budget. And for the first years of its life, it made some major cuts to its overhead. That included serving notice to hundreds of pilots and flight attendants in 2008 that it would either be laying them off or relocating them. This got the airline in hot water with the world's largest pilot union. After over a year of negotiations, the pilots began a strike and Spirit Airlines' fleet was grounded. The strike only lasted 3 days and flights were back in the air after 6, but it was a major black eye for Spirit's reputation with labor watchdogs. But that didn't mean that it was in the clear with its employees or its passengers. Spirit needed to keep costs low, and that meant it staffed on a shoestring. It generally didn't have the level of backup needed to keep flights on time in an emergency. That meant that if a pilot got sick or was deemed not fit to fly, or if a plane had a mechanical issue, the flight just didn't operate that day. Thousands of people saw their plans derailed. Canceled or delayed flights are a major problem for most airlines, often due to outside factors like weather. But Spirit consistently ranked dead last for on-time performance for much of the 2000s and early 2010s. And that likely killed the company, right? Well, it's hard to believe, but Spirit Airlines proved that a company can be a massive success, despite no one actually liking you. It did what it promised for the most part, offering flights at rock-bottom prices. And Baldanza's gambit was seen as a revolutionary success. So much so, in fact, that the company decided to go public in 2011. It debuted on the stock market with an IPO of $12 a share, and by 2014 it would soar to a high of just over $84, making it one of the most promising airline stocks out there. And that makes its shocking fall all the more bizarre. Today, if you look at the stock market, you won't find Spirit Airlines at all. It was delisted in November 2024 as a part of the company's bankruptcy proceedings. But it had crashed prior, with its last days on the market hovering around the 30 cents per share mark. Countless investors lost their shirts on the low-cost airline as it went from being synonymous with savings to being synonymous with financial disaster. The airline is still flying today, but its future is far from certain, with many wondering how it fell so far so fast. And it was a story with plenty of unexpected stops. As the 2010s dawned, Spirit had firmly established itself in the ultra-low-cost carrier sector, but it had new competition. Spirit, Allegiant, and Frontier were all in a battle to win over this area of the market, and Spirit was starting to come off as increasingly desperate. Some of its tactics, like putting ads on its planes and running a website that was full of pop-ups, only contributed to its poor reputation. But as long as its stock price was high, many people assumed that the shareholders didn't mind the company's vibes. It turned out that the shareholders disagreed. In an unexpected move, Baldanza was ousted as CEO in January 2016. This was a big shock given that he had been heavily responsible for creating Spirit Airlines as we knew it, and the company didn't quite have an image without him. The new CEO, Robert L. Fornaro, came from a former low-cost airline, AirTran, which had been acquired by Southwest. Fornaro was a highly skilled corporate hand with experience in mergers, and he wasted no time changing things around in Spirit to make the company more appealing. So, was a merger in the offing? Among the first moves Fornaro made was to partner with the Disney Institute, the beloved mega-corporation's training program. The aim was to give all of Spirit's employees a refresher course in customer service. He wanted the company to not only be more welcoming, but more reliable, and one of its big focuses was on getting the fleet's on-time performance up to par. And the results were shocking. In 2015, it was dead last. But by the end of 2017, the company had risen to second place overall, only behind old stalwart Delta. It also received high reviews for its safety procedures, and they even started making it fun to fly again. Fornaro stepped down after less than 2 years, being replaced by CFO Ted Christie, who continued his strategy to modernize the company. In 2018, Spirit became the first ultra-low-cost airline to add high-speed Wi-Fi, which has become an essential part of the flying experience. After all, we still have to put our phones in airplane mode every time we fly, but we can't exactly disconnect, can we? Gotta take all those plane selfies for the gram. Spirit's decision to add top-of-the-line Wi-Fi on all of its planes by the following year was seen as a big step forward to make them compete with the more upscale airlines. And as the 2020s were on the horizon, everything was looking up under the new leadership. But history had other plans. During the last months of 2019, the company made some big moves, including announcing a new headquarters in Dania Beach and purchasing 100 new aircraft. They were getting ready for an exciting future. And then the floor fell out below them. The COVID-19 pandemic took over the world, grinding leisure travel to a halt and causing a massive crash in air traffic. No one was flying except for essential business and emergency travel for months. Most foreign borders were shut, and every airline took a massive hit. But Spirit's financial status was even more precarious. The company had been running on a narrow profit margin for a while, and it quickly hit rough waters. It took $334 million in aid from the federal government, which was trying to keep top companies from going bankrupt. This allowed them to pay salaries for its employees for the first 6 months of the pandemic. But it soon had to put up to 30% of its employees on a leave of absence. No one escaped the impact of the virus, and it soon wound up in the news for the wrong reasons when a passenger died of COVID while on board a Spirit flight. The airline took a lot of public heat for the fact that the airline didn't know that there was an infected person on board and didn't alert the passengers. To survive, Spirit was gonna need some help. It was 2022 and Spirit's stock price was in the toilet. It was just a waiting game for a savior to emerge or the company to give up the ghost. While COVID had largely passed out of the news and flights had resumed, the company was yet to climb out of its financial hole. Then, in February, Frontier Airlines made its move, aiming to acquire the company in full. The two seemed like a good match on the surface, with both having similar business models and Frontier being in healthier financial shape. The deal would be a $2.8 billion combo of cash and stock, and if it went through, it would create the 5th largest airline in the country. But it wasn't to be. In the end, Spirit shareholders weren't happy with the deal, finding it to not be financially rich enough. Regulators and passengers were worried as well. A merger of the two rock-bottom carriers could have reduced competition and give the new airline no reason to try to keep its service up to a current standard. In the end, the shareholders voted to reject the deal, keeping Spirit independent as it continued to make its way out of its financial hole and find a new suitor, especially as another bigger deal was looming. 2 months after the initial offer by Frontier, JetBlue stepped in and made a much bigger offer, equivalent to $3.6 billion. JetBlue was a different kind of suitor, a mid-range airline known for its affordable fares combined with decent amenities. Spirit would help expand it into the low-cost sector and make it a powerhouse able to compete with the big old guard airlines like United and Delta. But there were big concerns about this merger as well, namely the government. Spirit was hesitant to get on board with JetBlue because of the fear of a potential antitrust lawsuit, with the government fearing that the partnership would raise prices for customers. And soon the merger was headed to court. JetBlue accepted an upgraded offer in July 2022, and Spirit shareholders approved the deal. But the Justice Department sued, and in January 2024, a trial ruled that the deal would violate anti-competition laws. This looked like it might have been the final blow for Spirit, as the company's stock almost tumbled by half within days. No one knew how long the company's precarious financial status could hold out. And as it turned out, the answer was not long. Spirit Airlines filed for bankruptcy protection in November 2024, sending its stock into a free fall. It intended to keep operating as it restructured, but it was delisted from the New York Stock Exchange. Despite those dire straits, it rejected another buyout offer from Frontier and emerged from bankruptcy in March 2025. But this wouldn't be the end of the story. By August, it announced that it was running out of money and it might be in danger of closing its doors. A second bankruptcy filing later that month, followed by heavy furloughs of flight attendants and the reduction of its flight schedule, made people think that the end might be near. And the future all falls on the shoulders of one man. Ted Christie kept a low profile since taking over as CEO right before the bottom fell out of the company, but by now, the longtime airline executive was facing a fiscal cliff, and to regain profitability, he needed to make deep cuts. But Spirit Airlines had limited options because its brand is essentially based around one thing: low costs. While other businesses might be able to make up a financial shortfall by raising fares, doing this might take away the one reason people have for booking a flight with Spirit. And it may have been an impossible task because he stepped down in April 2025, and he was replaced by a council of executives to lead the company in the interim until a new CEO was found, if one was even needed. And so Spirit might ultimately fail by success. Spirit rose so far and so fast on a unique business model, creating a no-frills airline that made travel more affordable. But if that model doesn't work anymore, there may not be a way to rebrand that gives Spirit a solid foothold in the market. After all, airline history is littered with names like Continental and Pan Am that dominated only to disappear into history, and Spirit may be about to join them as a ghost. Want to know more about the ugly side of the unfriendly skies? Check out Weird Law That's Making Flying in the US Miserable, or watch this video instead.